Welcome to a candidate forum for California State Senate District 8. The candidates in alpha order are Angelique Ashby and Dave Jones. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters, Sacramento County, the Black American Political Association of California, Sacramento Chapter, and the Sacramento Metro Cable Television Commission. I'm Paula Lee, a member of the League and moderator for this forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization of men and women. We work at all levels of government, national, state, and local, to encourage the informed and the active participation in government. The League does not support or oppose candidates or parties. Although we do not endorse or oppose candidates, we are a political organization, and we do, after careful study, take positions on ballot measures and legislation. You can find our positions on our website. If you're interested in public policy, or you just want to support our volunteer work, we invite you to join us. This format tonight will be as follows. Both speakers will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then they will have 1 minute to answer questions in rotating order. Finally, the speakers will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Speakers, candidates, the timer is right there in the front row, Claudia Bonsignore, and she will give you the 30-second sign when you have 30 seconds left and the stop sign. Go ahead and finish your sentence when you see the stop sign. It's okay. And now we'll begin with an opening statement from Angelique Ashby. Angelique?
Thank you so much. Let me start by thanking Metro Cable and, of course, all the folks sponsoring this forum, particularly the League of Women Voters. I'm honored to be here today. My name is Angelique Ashby. I currently serve as the Vice Mayor of the City of Sacramento, where I have served on the council for the last 12 years. My family moved to the Sacramento area when I was little, 10 years old, and I went to school here, including at Sac High in the heart of Oak Park. Shortly after high school, I had a baby. I was a very young single mom, and we struggled mightily. In fact, I used welfare, food stamps. I lived in low-income subsidized housing, and I was very grateful for a program called Child Action that subsidized childcare for myself and my son. I worked full-time during those years, and I put myself through UC Davis undergrad and McGeorge Law School while raising my son on my own. After law school, I married my husband, who would become a nurse. He helps run the emergency department in Sutter, downtown. We added 2 more children to our family, my son Tyus, who's currently at the University of Oregon, and my little 9-year-old daughter, Aaliyah. I'm very proud to be in this race, proud to be a candidate in front of you today asking for your vote. I am a person who is endorsed by the outgoing Senator, Dr. Richard Pan, which is a big point of pride for me because I believe Dr. Pan has done an amazing job as our senator. On the line of endorsements, I'm very proud to announce today that I have earned the endorsement of Governor Gavin Newsom, who has stated that I am the candidate in this race that he would like to work with in the state legislature to move forward the Democratic agenda across the state of California. I look forward to partnering with the governor and the many members of the legislature to make California a place for everyone. I look forward to bringing people together, bringing my brand of politics to the state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. And now an opening statement from Dave Jones.
Thanks so very much for organizing this forum. My name is Dave Jones, and it's a privilege to get to appear today to provide a little bit of background and context for my candidacy for State Senate District 8. Senate District 8 residents deserve to have a state senator with extensive experience and success in addressing the important issues facing us today. In addition to passing affordable housing and living wage ordinances at the City of Sacramento, and passing laws to prevent health insurers from charging women more than men, and protecting seniors from financial scams while serving as your state assembly member. I led the state's largest consumer protection department as insurance commissioner, served in the U.S. Department of Justice, and I'm an educator. I'll use my experience to fight for you and our community. We face many challenges. Homelessness is worse in Sacramento than San Francisco. We don't have enough shelters, mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment for the unhoused. We don't have enough affordable housing or housing generally. The price of housing is outside the reach of our families and certainly our kids. The state needs to insist that local governments build shelters, provide treatment, build affordable housing, and build more housing generally. We need to support investments and actions that will lead to more high-paying jobs with benefits in our region, and make sure that we invest to support high-quality K-12 education, college education, and vocational education, affordable child care, universal affordable health care, and care for our seniors. Climate change is literally killing us, whether it's more severe and frequent wildfires, drought, urban heat islands, or flooding. I'm an international leader in developing policies to address climate change and to transition from reliance on fossil fuels. That's why oil companies Chevron and Valero and their cronies spent $1.7 million in the primary attacking me and are likely to spend at least $2 million in the November election on TV ads and mailers attacking me, because they don't want someone in the state Senate who represents ordinary people over the oil industry and other corporations. I'm proud to have the endorsement of state, local, federal, and community activists and leaders. I hope to have your vote for state Senate. Thank you.
Angelique, many have called in recent years for a new, broader vision of public safety in our communities. What is your broader vision?
Yeah, great question, and really important. Having served over the last 12 years, this has been an issue that I have worked on, and I'm very proud to have been the author of the body camera ordinance for the city of Sacramento, the only entity in our region that actually wears body cameras. I'd be more than happy to sponsor legislation at the state level to provide body cameras on all law enforcement statewide. I also authored the Police Oversight Commission for the city of Sacramento, as well as brought forward a package, a suite of public safety nuanced and program changes with my council colleague Larry Carr, the Black Lives Matter platform, 8 that can't wait, and we added Breonna's Law. Sacramento was the first big city in the state of California to adopt Breonna's Law and the first to adopt the whole suite of Black Lives Matter 8 that can't wait. I'm very proud to have been the author of those pieces of legislation at the local level, and we'll look forward to building the relationships between law enforcement and the community that will help move California forward to a future where people feel safe, but they also feel they have a strong connection to their law enforcement community.
Dave?
Our law enforcement officers are struggling with the challenges that they face and what they're being asked to do. Oftentimes, they're being asked to be mental health treatment providers, substance abuse treatment providers. We need to bring online and provide funding for complementary services. We need to be able to deploy healthcare professionals, mental health professionals, substance abuse treatment disorder professionals when the call comes in that someone is acting as a result of a mental illness or substance abuse, but not presenting as violent. It's also critically important, too, that we hold accountable law enforcement officers when they err or when they do injurious things. I'm the person in this race that's actually led a law enforcement agency. I have had to make the tough decisions with regard to investigations, but also accountability. And I think that broader vision contemplates, yes, securing public safety, but bringing additional resources to bear that are necessary to improve public safety, as well as making sure we have accountability.
Dave, California is grappling with the complex issue of a growing number of residents who are homeless in our state. What is causing this growth, and what do you propose as a solution to this complex situation?
The state needs to insist that cities and counties approve and build more shelters, affordable housing, and housing generally. We have homelessness now in the city of Sacramento and county of Sacramento that exceeds that of San Francisco. Time and time again, shelters, affordable housing have been blocked. When I was on the council, I authored the law that required 15% of all new development to be affordable. My opponent voted to gut that requirement. As a result, we're thousands of units behind now. So the solution is to build more housing generally, to build more affordable housing, to provide shelters with wraparound services such as mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment, and get about the job of getting people off the streets. It's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for us. It's a situation that simply is untenable and unsustainable, and we need to act now. And the state's role can be continued funding, but also insistence that cities and counties get about the business of providing the housing, generally housing, affordable housing, shelters that are desperately needed to get people off the streets.
Angelique?
Paula, a little extra time since my opponent called me out on the last question. I'd like to respond to that. My opponent wrote a low-income inclusionary housing ordinance that was invalidated in court and then brought back to the City Council during the time that I was there. It is true that we had to rewrite it. It had to be compliant with state law. On to the question, I believe you asked about homelessness, and it is very clear to anyone with eyes that we have a problem in the state of California. It's not just in the city of Sacramento. However, there are three things I think are really important to talk about here. First of all, I'm a signatory to Measure O, and my opponent hasn't taken a position on Measure O. Measure O forces the city and the county to work together. It forces us to have a plan for services from the county and housing from the city. We must put that in place. It's critically important. In the next 2 weeks, I will open a hotel project in my district, a conversion project that will house over 200 homeless people with children in the city of Sacramento. It includes critical wraparound services that are paramount to people's success. I've also recently spoken up about school safety and making sure we keep kids safe. The only way forward through addressing homelessness is to be honest about the various factors that are causing it. One is housing, but another is drug addiction, and another is mental health. And I'm very prepared to go to the state capitol and deal with all three.
Angelique, many say reducing gun violence calls for more than just registering firearms and trying to get guns off the streets. What strategies and/or policies have you supported to address gun violence prevention? And if elected, what will you move forward to reduce gun violence in our communities?
Yeah, this one's personal for me. I'm really proud to be a member of Moms Demand Action, the national coalition of moms working together to reduce gun violence. I joined that group when Amber Clark, the librarian in my district, was gunned down by a person who had mental illness. He brought his gun, by the way, from another state, which is something we deeply need to address. I'm proud to be the gun sense violent candidate identified in this race and supported by Moms Demand Action. I think that one of the things the state of California has done a great job. But the problem is the state of California still exists inside of the United States of America, and so other states need to be better partners. We need to work with our federal partners, and we need to work on gun safety always. That's something I'm very proud to do with Moms Demand Action and something I'm very proud to do at the local level. We need to continue to do it at the state level. We know who most of the offenders are of violent crimes in the city of Sacramento. Many of them are domestic violence perpetrators. Many of them are people with a violent record previously. We need to work hard to make sure they do not have weapons.
Dave?
I'm proud also to be a Moms Demand Action gun sense candidate, reflecting my long history in the Assembly as insurance commissioner in supporting and authoring common sense gun legislation and policy. One of the things the state of California needs to do is get guns out of the hands of people that have been adjudicated as so mentally ill or otherwise dangerous they shouldn't have a gun. We have about 20,000 people in the Armed Prohibited Persons database. We need to hire the agents at the Department of Justice, knock on the doors of those individuals, and separate them from their weapons. In addition, we need to make investments in those communities where there's a higher incidence of gun violence. We know where those communities are, and those investments should go a long way to trying to prevent gun violence. We also need to believe women when they say that they are being harassed or the subject of violence. You can draw a direct line between those that perpetrate violence against women and ultimately those that are involved in gun violence. And we ought to make any sort of harassment or violence against women a strong crime that's strongly penalized as another way of preventing gun violence.
Dave, on this issue of safety, interpersonal gun violence is often concentrated in under-resourced neighborhoods where cycles of violence, injury, trauma, and retaliation have devastating effects. How can the state address this?
Well, one of the ways in which the state can address this, and one of the ways in which the state can partner with local law enforcement, is bringing to bear the capacities and capabilities of state to partner with local law enforcement to identify those hot spots where there's a higher incidence of gun violence, whether it's stranger on stranger or friend on friend or family member on family member. And then we need to allocate resources to those communities, both prevention resources, but also resources to try to improve the quality of life in the community. And then we need to apprehend and hold accountable those that engage in the violence. As I said a moment ago, you can draw a direct line between those that perpetrate gun violence and those those that engage in domestic violence. We need to listen to women when they say that they have been assaulted or harassed. We need to hold accountable those that do that and make sure that those crimes are treated as they should be, as a crime. So those are a number of ways in which I think we can address this scourge. Others as well, I think promoting, as Moms Demand Action does, safety measures to try to secure weapons, to make sure that those that lawfully have weapons aren't making them available in ways that they can be assessed and used against people in their family or in their neighborhood.
Angelique?
Over-reliance on law enforcement to be the only entity to deal with gun violence would be a big mistake. Most of what's happening in poor neighborhoods is that people are trying to protect themselves. And what we have to do, and if the chief of police for the city of Sacramento were standing in front of me, she would say this to you exactly, is partner. It is all about the partnerships. Yes, some with public safety entities like probation or parole, but a lot of it is with the school districts. It's with employers. It's with nonprofits. It's with those who work every single day to try to create better and richer opportunities for people who feel like they have no alternative. I've been in that space before, having been a young welfare recipient and mom. It can feel like a permanent state to be poor, but it's not. And if we provide people with childcare, high-paying jobs, and access to education, we can lift them out of their circumstances. We can give them hope and opportunity and ultimately reduce gun violence.
Angelique, California is one of the most restrictive states regarding public access to police records that are often needed to address misconduct. Do you support legislation that would make police department records and public safety agencies in the state more accessible to the public?
I was very proud of the state of California for bringing forward the plans to create a licensing entity for law enforcement. They did a great job working together, Dr. Shirley Weber and PORAC, the Police Officers Research Association, to put forward a solution for exactly this. Of course, it's a balancing act. Everyone has a human resources department knows the balancing act of making sure that people have their rights. However, we do need to be able to hold police officers accountable. And I think they've done a very good job of advocating to this end and creating a plan for how to get there. I'm very honored to have the support of every law enforcement entity that has endorsed in this race. I think holding them accountable is a lot easier when they're at the table and they're willing to be a part of the solution. That is something I plan on doing at the state legislature, bringing groups together just as I have done at the city level to do things like creating the Police Oversight Commission. These programs work well for accountability. They make things transparent and they give people a voice and an opportunity to participate.
Dave?
The short answer is yes. I support making those records available so that the public has an opportunity to have insight into past bad behavior of officers and so that that behavior can be corrected and sanctioned. I'm the only person in this race that's actually led a law enforcement organization. Accountability for law enforcement officers is critical. We entrust in them great responsibility. The vast majority do the right thing. There are some, sadly, that have not, and those that have not ought not to be wearing the badge anymore. I was proud to support the entire package of police reform measures that moved in the last 2 years. They were essential to address, sadly, a history of individuals in law enforcement organizations who abused the badge, abused their power, abused their trust, and engaged in conduct unbecoming of an officer. I believe we need to continue to move forward with an accountability agenda, and that includes transparency and making records available.
Dave, air quality improvement and greenhouse gas reductions are urgent regional goals. How will you manage competing interests of low-density housing development and increased highway roadway travel against mass transit utilization and active transportation, like walk biking advocates?
Climate change is literally killing us, and so we need to change what we're doing across all sectors of our economy, whether it's energy production, the transportation sector, the building sector, you name it. Thankfully, California has been a leader, but it's a critical issue in this race. There's a reason why Chevron and Valero and their cronies spent $1.7 million attacking me in the primary, and why they're primed to spend another $2 million against me, because they know that I have been a champion with regard to addressing climate change. I'll continue to be a champion, and they don't want me in the state Senate. I think the way to strike that balance is to make more investments in higher density, mixed use development supported by transit, supported by walking, supported by bicycling. I think that's one area where we need to continue to make more progress. At the same time, we have to recognize that we do have a housing shortage in this state. We are going to have to build more housing at all levels of affordability. And so I think while we make progress on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we also need to strike a balance with regard to ensuring that we're building more housing generally.
Angelique?
Thank you. I built my reputation on this issue too, partially right here at this dais, serving as the chair for the local land use formation committee. I have opposed every urban sprawl project that came forward. I live in and represent the new growth area for the city of Sacramento. I currently house the most low-income affordable complexes in the city at 11. I'm all about multiple uses for housing. We need stock. We need to add housing. The environment is a paramount issue, and I've been proud to be a champion at the local level here as well on that, whether it's about tree canopies or air quality or passing an environmental package that we've done at the city of Sacramento every year since I've been here to address climate action. Let me tell you that while my opponent has sent out a staggering 17 negative mailers, putting me in bed with the oil companies, it simply is not true. I took a pledge, and I have not taken dollars from gas or oil in this race.
Angelique, for Californians not homeless yet, the lack of affordable homes for purchase and or rent is at crisis proportions. The Gender Equity Policy Institute found that women disproportionately struggle with housing costs in California, particularly Black and Latino women. Do you support inclusionary housing laws that go beyond voluntary incentives and housing trust fees, but require developers to build a percentage of affordable homes? Why or why not?
Yes, and we have them in the city of Sacramento. Developers are allowed to choose which one makes the most sense. For example, I recently worked on the replacement of the old arena project in the city of Sacramento, which will become a hospital generating 3,000 high-wage jobs. But it will also create massive housing around the entity. As part of that project, the developer has agreed to go above and beyond on the inclusionary component. It will include senior housing, very critical supportive staff housing for people working at the hospital, student housing, and housing for people who need services from the hospital. That could potentially be mental health or ambulant care, whatever is needed. I do support increased mixed use of housing. Housing anywhere along the spectrum helps housing everywhere along the spectrum, and we really need these resources. Some years ago, the state removed redevelopment dollars, and we need those dollars back. Local governances cannot build high-density projects without a subsidy from the state. I look forward to fighting for that in the state legislature.
Dave?
I'd like an additional 15 seconds to respond to an attack just made. My opponent took a pledge not to take funds from oil-funded PACs. On March 2nd, 2022, she took a max contribution from Californians for Jobs and a Strong Economy, which is a Chevron-funded PAC. I'm looking at our FPPC report right here. I do support inclusionary affordable housing. I wrote the ordinance in Sacramento that required 15% of all new housing to be affordable to very low and low-income households. It generated thousands of units across the city, only to have my opponent come into office and vote to eliminate that requirement. The ordinance had not been subject to a lawsuit. It was not struck down by a court. It was a decision that was made, unfortunately, that caused great damage in terms of our city's capacity for affordable housing, and we're suffering as a result. You see the suffering on the streets each and every day.
Dave, California has a goal of all new cars sold by 2035 being zero emissions. As gasoline sales decrease, so does gasoline sales tax revenue, a significant source of revenue for the state and cities. Do you support the zero emission goal? And if so, how should California replace this revenue source?
I do support the governor's announced policy of, by 2035, all new car sales being electric or zero emissions. We need to do that because if we don't, we're literally killing ourselves through climate change. I think that the way in which we address the decline in revenue from our current approach of taxing gas sales is by looking at alternatives like vehicles miles traveled or other ways in which to collect revenues from those that use the roads. It is absolutely essential that we maintain that revenue because we're going to continue to have a need for road repairs, for new roads, for other infrastructure associated with our road network. And so as we transition to electric vehicles or other zero-emission vehicles, we've got to come up with alternative sources of funding. And one idea that's in play is to tax based on the actual vehicle miles traveled. That will have a further benefit of rewarding those that use public transportation as opposed to vehicles.
Angelique?
First of all, in our sort of ongoing debate here, local journalists have already addressed and dispelled this rumor about the PAC that my opponent continues to bring up. And I would just say I think we've learned many things from previous presidents. Just repeating something ad nauseum doesn't make it true. Your question about electric vehicles and how to bring equity to that issue is really important. I know that rebates played a critical role in my family's ability to purchase an electric vehicle. I am very proud to be supported by multiple members of the SMUD board, in part because of the hard work they've done to map out communities with the greatest needs and identify what resources they can embed in those communities to help address this issue and get more people into electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are still vehicles, though, so we still need to make sure we have roadways. Multimodal transportation is woefully underfunded in this region. We need additional dollars for light rail to the airport. We need additional dollars for our robust bike master plan that is not even halfway implemented in the city of Sacramento, and your next state legislature needs to really provide those resources to this region.
Angelique, how could you help Elk Grove and Regional Transit secure funding to extend Regional Transit's light rail to Elk Grove?
Well timed. Great question. Well, first of all, Measure A is on the ballot. I've been on the Sacramento City Council for over a decade, and folks have tried for a transit tax a couple of times, and it hasn't passed, which leaves us to fall short from our matching dollars for the state and federal resources necessary to build that light rail to the airport. It's really important that we get that done. We were able to get light rail out to Cosumnes River Community College, which I think is critically important, but light rail doesn't go everywhere it needs to go. It doesn't even go to Sac State, our largest institution for youth who are in college in our region. We also have this partnership with UC Davis. We need to work with SACOG, our regional council of governances, to continue to draw down dollars for large transit projects that include accessing those major campuses, Aggie Square, the hospital coming online in Natomas, Sac State, and we need to fight for those multimodal dollars because even though light rail needs money, so too does the bike transit plan.
Dave?
The question was, how do we bring light rail to Elk Grove? Measure A does have funding for public transportation, but not enough. And so we're going to have to look to the state to assist not only in extending light rail to Elk Grove, but to the airport and to other parts of our region, and we're going to have to look to the federal government. We're very ably represented by Congresspeople Ami Bera and Doris Matsui, and I'm confident, given my long relationship with both of them, that I can work closely with them and with other members of the Sacramento region delegation to bring the federal dollars in and the state dollars we need to expand light rail not only to Elk Grove, but to the airport and to other parts of our community. We also need to make investments in walking trails, in bicycle trails, and other ways of getting people out of their cars, and we need to make investments in more higher density, mixed use housing where people have a chance to walk or bike to their jobs, to where they dine, or to other amenities. All of these things are critically important, and I think we need to align our state incentives with SACOG's blueprint to advance the blueprint of making sure that we have a more sustainable and livable Sacramento region.
Dave, on this topic, traffic congestion is increasing in Elk Grove as well as Sacramento County and throughout the region. Elk Grove and Sacramento County are seeking sales tax increases this November. Do you believe this is the best way to fund government operations in Elk Grove and, in Sacramento County's case, transportation projects?
I don't know that they have any other choices. Given the limits on the assessed valuation of residential and commercial property, the failure of the split roll measure that would have cut off commercial property so that it could be reassessed and more revenues generated, there really are few options. Elk Grove is an exciting, dynamic community with tremendous amenities. It's exciting to see all that's happening there, including the zoo moving there. That's going to bring with it more traffic and a greater need to invest in public transportation and other ways for people to get around. But it's also going to put a strain and stress on the existing road system. And so in both cases you mentioned, there are really very few options other than those which are being pursued. But I look forward to working with Elk Grove leaders and county leaders and City of Sacramento leaders in looking for ways to bring additional state dollars in, as well as federal dollars, working with our federal representatives to help fund the necessary improvements we need to continue to make this community the best possible place in which to live and work.
Angelique?
Yes. So first of all, the question, yes, I support both of those ballot initiatives. They're both critically important. I think, you asked if it's the only way that we could fund these resources, and the answer is obviously no. It might be the best way right now for both of those areas to receive the additional services they're looking for. But one thing I'm really proud of on my record serving on the Sacramento City Council is finding ways to draw down additional resources, whether it's passing school bonds. We've built 4 new schools and made improvements on every school site in my district. We built 10 new parks using carefully parks fees already collected, and using funds from developers to build a aquatics facility that serves the entire region and is the only Olympic-sized pool in Sacramento. I do think there are ways to do big projects, including transportation projects, if you have partners. But we need a state legislative partner who's going to go get those dollars and bring them back to Elk Grove, Rio Linda, Alberta, Sacramento, and Sacramento County, and I'm prepared to do just that.
Angelique,
yes.
What do you propose, if elected to the Senate, to improve our water crisis, and do you support the tunnels?
So I've had the great privilege of serving on the statewide Aqua Board for many years from the City Council, which is really unusual. Normally, City Council members don't do it, but because I worked so hard to attain millions and millions of dollars to improve the levees in Natomas and fortify those levees for the 110,000 people that rely on them and depend on them, I was asked to join the Aqua Board. I think there are other really good ways to address the water shortage. When you serve on Aqua, you get to learn a lot about things like water storage and purple pipe. Places like San Diego have done a really good job of recycling their water and using it for ag purposes. Farmers, really creative on this too, and the way that they are doing things and to minimize their use of water but maximize how that water is serving their crops and really providing what we need to feed people across this state is impressive. I have not supported the Delta tunnels in the past. I would say groundwater storage is a better solution for California and one I hope to pursue in the legislature.
Dave?
I did not support the Delta Tunnels project, but whether the single tunnel goes forward or not, we're going to have an acute shortage of water here, and that's driven by climate change, less precipitation in the mountains. It's falling as rain, not snow, and as a consequence, our reliance on that snowpack has been much challenged. I think we're going to have to do a number of things. We're going to have to increase conservation. It means that we're going to have to ask people to voluntarily change from a lawn that consumes a lot of water to one that doesn't. We're going to need to bring state dollars in to support people in making that change. We're going to have to look at new ways of storing water so that when we do have water, we can store it in a way that we can then have access to it. There are 2 projects in the county that are pursuing this very idea of replenishing the aquifers, one in the northeast and one in the south. I think that provides a tremendous opportunity for water storage, particularly when we have high flows in our rivers. We can pull that water off, put it in the aquifer, and then it can be available when we need it. We are going to have to learn how to do more with less, however, given what's happening. We're just not moving fast enough in terms of addressing the climate crisis.
Dave, what can you do as a state senator to support underserved students and ensure that all Californians have access to a quality education?
Well, what I've already done as a state assembly member is I authored legislation creating the largest early childhood education program at that time in the state of California, and all the studies indicate that early child education really helps underserved communities and kids in them get a better start. As a state senator, I look forward to supporting full funding of K through 12 and college education, but also looking at that through an equity lens and making sure we're moving dollars to those communities that have had the biggest challenges in terms of education outcomes. And that means taking another look at exactly how those dollars flow. I mean, right now there is a mechanism whereby more dollars can flow to districts that have more challenges. But the question I have is, are the dollars getting from the district level to the schools that need them? And I think there's more the state can do. We've moved from basically the bottom of per pupil funding to about the middle. I think we can do a better job of moving more resources to schools and helping them and supporting them in the critical job of educating all of our kids.
Angelique?
Thank you. So I'm really proud to have supported 2 school bond measures in Natomas to build those 4 new schools and to make major improvements on every school site in the district. Now having the high school in the city of Sacramento with the most students at Indercombe High, just a few blocks from my house, it is very clear to me that we need more resources for students. And do you ever take a drive through Elk Grove? They have a lot of high schools, but not nearly enough. And this is a topic that is at the top of mind of voters. How do we increase not only access to education, but the quality of education that students are getting across Senate District 8. I'm proud to be a mom who's championed these issues at the city. For one thing, libraries play a critical role in this. I also led the library ballot initiative that kept 3 libraries open in impoverished parts of our city, North Sac and South Sac. We can't afford to lose those partners. The library is the one place where everyone can use the internet, everyone can get some help, everyone can get a book. We need to work hard on bridging the digital divide, another area I have been very proud to lead in Sacramento.
Okay, both of you talked about well, let me just ask this question. The voter wants to know, why were mailers and ads during the primary so negative? And will similar attacks continue through this election?
Who are you directing the question to?
Angelique first.
Okay, I might not be the right one to start on this. My opponent sent 17 so I'm proud to run on my record. I'm proud to run as exactly who I am, a former single mom who fought my way through school, fought my position onto the city council, and has worked really hard to serve the people of this city and stand up for women and children and people who need a second chance, just like I did. I'm happy to run a positive campaign. It is my opponent who has decided that I'm worth over $250,000 in negative pieces going out to every house in Senate District 8, which is very disappointing.
Dave.
I think it's important that voters understand the records of the people that are coming before them. And I do think it's critically important that voters have information that lets them see who's voted on what and when. And so I think it's important voters know that I authored the Affordable Housing Ordinance and my opponent voted against it, that I authored the Living Wage Ordinance and my opponent voted against the Minimum Wage Ordinance in Sacramento. And I also think it's important that voters understand that Chevron and Valero and their cronies spent $1.7 million opposing me and supporting my opponent in the primary, and they're online to do another $2 million. There's a reason for that. They don't want me in there because they know I've stood up to Big Pharma, the big insurance industry and the big oil companies. They would prefer to have someone more tractable who's more to their liking. And so I think it's important the voters understand that. Now, I'm proud of my record, and I'm running on my record of experience as a city council member, state assembly member, insurance commissioner, serving in the federal government, as well as being an educator. And we'll continue to run on that record because I think experience matters, and this district deserves to have the most experienced individual as its state senator.
Paul, I'd like an opportunity to rebut, even if it's just 15 seconds.
We're not doing rebuttals, though.
Okay, but it directly called me out, and it's untrue. And so I just feel it's worth pointing out here. You can't send 17 mailers where you darken me out, change my appearance, put oil tags all over me, and then claim that the oil industry is with me when that is not how independent expenditures work. My opponent's been around a long time. He knows the rules of the game. He has decided to run a negative campaign with no reason to do so.
Do you have a response?
Yes, we've run an honest campaign that points to the differences in our record and who's supporting who. And again, just look at Ms. Ashby's financial report. She took a max-out contribution from Californians for Jobs and a Strong Economy, which is a Chevron-funded PAC. Just look at the FPPC reports indicating that $1.7 million was spent against me by big oil and its cronies. They're not doing this in a vacuum. They're doing this to elect somebody else, not me, but my opponent. Voters need to know that.
Dave, what's your position on Prop 26 and 27, the confusing and competing gambling propositions with big money being spent to pass them?
I support 26 and oppose 27. What troubles me in particular about 27 is that we have a number of well-funded outside entities that are trying to come in and basically take over gaming, which the state of California's voters have decided in principal measure is something that Native American tribes should have the right to do. And so Prop 27 would upend the compact that's been entered into between the people of California and tribes throughout the state of California, a compact that said that we would permit gaming to occur, and it would be a revenue stream for tribes to help improve themselves and help address centuries of genocide and oppression. And so these outside interests who are trying to fool voters into thinking that this is somehow a homeless measure, when in fact only a fraction of the revenues might actually help the homeless, it's really an effort to try to grab market share with regard to gaming, and voters should oppose it.
Angelique?
Look, I'm not here to defend Prop 26 or Prop 27, but those are not true statements. Prop 27, if it passed, would provide hundreds of millions of dollars to addressing homelessness. That being said, the tribes are trying to protect their tribal ability to do sports betting, and I honor that. I honor and respect that, and they have the opportunity to do that, and they should have that opportunity. These are tough, and they're complicated, and they're further complicated by the fact that there are two on there. And I think, like many of the ballot measures, people are seeking to find a balance on important issues. Homelessness is a critically important issue. I think it's important that it's being discussed, but I think the tribes, they have sovereign immunity, and that needs to be protected.
Angelique, more on propositions. What is your position on Prop 30, which, in short, raises the tax rate 1.75% on personal income above $2 million, and the revenue raised is dedicated to zero-emission vehicles and the infrastructure. It also includes wildfire prevention programs. The governor calls it a special interest to benefit Lyft. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, you know this about me, Paula, but I'm an Elizabeth Warren Democrat. So a tax on millionaires to help people who can't afford electric cars and also to address fires is a good and important goal, actually multiple good and important goals, and equity has to be a part of the discussion. If we're going to acknowledge that the climate is a key issue for us, and it certainly is, then we have to talk about how we bring everyone along. It is not possible for people in some of the communities in Senate District 8 to afford an electric vehicle. Any rebate program we can create to help SMUD, to help the city, to help the county, to help Elk Grove, to help Rio Linda and Alberta achieve those goals. They need infrastructure dollars, they need charging stations, People need rebates and opportunity. And as again, I'm proudly endorsed and supported by the firefighters. All the firefighters that have endorsed in this race are with me. And this is an important ballot measure, and I support it.
Dave?
I support Prop 30. The governor and I disagree strongly on this one. I think it's critically important that we identify and raise additional revenues to transition to a future where we have a EV charging infrastructure and the ability of our residents to move throughout the state, throughout their communities with electric vehicles, stopping the pollution that's literally killing us and driving climate change. It also has important funding with regard to addressing the more frequent and severe wildfires that are actually impacting us here as well in the Sacramento region with air quality, but literally killing people in other parts of California. I strongly support both the resources for the transition to electric vehicles, EV charging, but also the resources to make sure that our firefighters have resources they need to fight these fires, but also that we can engage in innovative approaches like prescribed fire and ecological thinning to reduce the risk our forests face by reducing the fuel in those forests.
First to you, Dave. What will you do to ensure you are not corrupted by opportunities to profit from this position as a state senator?
So I have a long history of public service, and I view public service as a calling. I've always acted ethically, and I have been a scourge with regard to corruption. That includes leading an investigation that ultimately resulted in putting 2 senior Democratic legislatures in prison where they belonged because they were a part of a bribery scheme headed up by a hospital CEO who was bribing them to prevent legislation that would have set a schedule for surgeries that this hospital CEO was doing at his hospital. So I have absolutely no tolerance for corruption. And I will continue to adhere to the highest standards with regard to ethics, call out corruption where it exists, use my office to fight it, and to make sure that not only I as a representative, but everybody representing us is acting in an ethical and transparent manner.
Angelique.
Yes, this is a great question and one I worked on with you, Paula, and the League of Women Voters. I'm very proud of Common Cause, League of Women Voters, myself, Shirley Conclino, the city clerk for the city of Sacramento some time ago, and the Fair Political Practices. We came together and created a suite of ethics and good governance implementations that we put in place. It includes an ethics code, an ethics commission, sunshine provisions. It's actually the most sweeping package in California, thanks in large part to participation from the League of Women Voters, something I'm proud to have authored and implemented and to continue to grow. Since Mayor Steinberg joined the council, we've added additional ethics and good governance packages. I think those are really important. This isn't an issue for me and hasn't been in my career. I have not been accused of using my city funds to run a campaign, and I feel that at the state legislature, this will be an area where I can repeat performance and bring forward ethics packages that will benefit statewide.
Angelique, the drought and the war in Ukraine have highlighted how reliant the region is on our natural resources. How can the region become more resource independent?
Well, first, let me just say that the war in Ukraine has had a major impact in Sacramento because there is a very large Ukrainian population here, many of them in my district, many in Elk Grove, and I want them to know that I stand solidly with them. And you're right, every time there is this type of conflict across the nation, it brings home the issues that we have to face here around resources and how we can be more cautious, more careful about what we're doing in our own best interest. California is so well positioned to take these things on, the largest economy in our state and one of the largest economies in the world. We just have to focus on it. There are so many opportunities in the state of California for us to do more. Money isn't an issue. This is definitely definitely one of them. And I am just thrilled at the opportunity to get in there, roll up my sleeves, work with the Women's Caucus, which has endorsed me. I'm so proud to have that endorsement to join a group of hardworking Democratic women in this state to address these issues.
Dave.
The war in Ukraine, as well as COVID, have underscored how fragile our supply lines are. We need to bring more manufacturing onshore, and we need to bring it here to Sacramento. As a state senator, I'll support making state investments in goods movement, including our ports and other infrastructure. Drought is going to be a more persistent problem because we're not moving fast enough to address climate change. Here, as we talked about earlier, we're going to have to engage in more conservation, and we're going to have to figure out new ways to store water so that the water is available when we need it. And again, I think one of the most promising technologies is replenishing the aquifers when our rivers are running high and when we have water that's available, and storing it underground and then making it available for use. With regard to conservation measures, I do think we're going to have to change some of our behavior in order to be able to do more with less water, because this is a problem that's not going away. There's enough climate change baked in the climate right now that we're looking at a future of less snowpack, less precipitation, less water for our region. I'm confident, though, that we can manage through this, that this is going to continue to be a great and growing region and a wonderful place for people to live and work. We're just going to have to work together to address the challenges.
Dave, we've talked about housing, but what are the biggest challenges to developing the much-needed housing and making it accessible to those who need it?
So I'm proud to have supported the package of pro-housing bills and proud to be supported by California YIMBY. These bills are designed to try to expand housing supply. The estimate is we're some 2 to 3 million units short of where we're going to need to be by 2030 and 2035. I think, too, as we talked about earlier, it's critically important that the state insists that cities and counties build affordable housing. I'm a big proponent of inclusionary affordable ordinances, having written one myself. I think the state can also play a role with regard to providing funding for affordable housing. And then we need shelters, mental health treatment, and substance treatment for the unhoused. It's simply unacceptable that we have so many people living on our streets. It's bad for them. It's bad for us. We've got to insist that cities and counties build and approve shelters. Now, I know something about this, having developed what's now a 200-bed shelter in my own council district back when I was on the council. Too few council members have done that, and so I think the state needs to lean in and insist that it get done so we can get people off the street.
Angelique?
Paula, will you repeat that question for me, please?
What are the biggest challenges to developing much-needed housing and making it accessible to those who need it?
Yeah. Well, you know, in Sacramento, we had a building moratorium in the new growth area, which really stalled our ability to create additional housing. And now we sit in a space where affordable housing is extremely difficult for a lot of reasons. I think key amongst them is the elimination of redevelopment, which was a decision made by the state legislature some years ago. What that really did was take away hundreds of millions of dollars that used to come to all the local governances through their housing and redevelopment agencies to build extraordinary projects like Hotel Berry and Mercy Housing and all of these iconic projects that we have around Sacramento that help provide wraparound services and really support people who have the most need. As you know, I lived in low-income housing as a young single mom. This is something I'm very passionate about. The biggest hindrance is funding, resources. We need a state legislator for Sacramento who will go in, who has the lived experience to understand what it's like to actually need to rely on that kind of housing and fight for those resources for our communities.
All right, last question. Angelique, what programs do you endorse to help immigrants, asylum seekers, and refugees with housing, jobs, school, language training, transportation, and legal advice?
Yeah, boy, has this been a big issue as of late. One of the things we've done at the City of Sacramento is to fund what we call the Fuel Network, which has really helped a lot of people who are struggling and worried. We've also worked very closely with CARES to help Muslim immigrants who have come to our area that need assistance and help. Sacramento is proudly a place that is home to many, many refugees. And what that's meant at the city level is always having an open mind to being able to support and provide services to people who need it the most. I'm very proud to have the Mexican consulate in my district. I've brokered a relationship with the consulate that has served us all well for several years. I think it's really important. I have members of my own family, as many of us do, who are immigrants to this country. And I think it's very important that we create the opportunities for everyone to succeed in California. There are plenty of resources. Sacramento, the city, has done an excellent job in this regard for many years, but I'm proud to have been a part of some of the big decisions as of late to help really lift people up.
Dave?
Sacramento is a region of immigrants. Each successive wave of immigrants have struggled, found their footing, and then contributed tremendously to our economy, some of the hardest working people in our region. We need, as a state, to be supportive. That means helping to provide affordable housing. That means education. That means job training. That means health care. That means assistance with child care. And I'm proud to have supported the expansion of our state Medi-Cal program to undocumented immigrants, principally because these are individuals in our community. Their kids are in our schools. If they get sick, that has impacts on us. They should have access to health care. So I think that all of these sorts of services are critically important. And I'm very excited at the prospect of working as a state senator with local and federal authorities and doing everything we can with regard to the latest wave of immigrants, including those coming from Ukraine, but also Afghanistan. I look forward to being supportive and doing everything we can to assist them as they become participants in our community.
Okay, closing statements. We'll begin with Angelique Ashby. Angelique, you have 1 minute.
Are you sure we're starting with me? You sure we're starting with me? Okay, great. Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much. What a wonderful opportunity to be here and speak directly to the voters. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've watched this, then I appreciate that you're trying to become a person who finds the information yourself and uses the wonderful resources put forward by the League of Women Voters. I currently serve as Vice Mayor of the City of Sacramento. I've proudly served on the Sacramento City Council for 12 years. More than half of my time on that council, I've served as the only woman. In this race, I would be the first woman in 20 years elected to the state Senate to serve the Sacramento area. I think it's past time. In fact, for our 3 legislative seats that really represent the total of Sacramento's area, we've elected 9 men in a row. And I think it is time to elect a woman. I would also like to just thank the people that have endorsed me. There are over 400 community leaders, and I'm just so grateful are taking this walk with me, as well as the Democratic Women's Legislative Caucus, many women's groups, the FemDems, Emily's List, which is the National Pro-Choice Democratic Women's Group, women, moms in office, and of course, I would like to end by just calling on my opponent to please, let's run a clean campaign free of negativity.
Dave Jones, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Thanks. Representing our community in the state Senate is a big responsibility. I have raised my family here and fought for families throughout our region, having served as a city council member, state assembly member, insurance commissioner, and as an educator. There are big differences between me and my opponent. I wrote the law requiring affordable housing. I worked to develop a 200-bed shelter. I co-wrote the law raising the minimum wage. The state needs to insist that cities and counties build shelters for the unhoused and affordable housing instead of blocking them and get people off the streets. We need to put people's needs and interests before those of corporations. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the California Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood advocates Marmonte, NARO Pro-Choice California, teachers, nurses, and grocery store workers, the Sierra Club, United States Senator Alex Padilla, and civil rights leader Dolores Huerta, and over 400 other local, state, and federal officials and community activists. I hope I've earned your vote for state Senate. You can learn more about our campaign at davejonesforsenate.com. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Well, thank you both for running for this very important office, because should you be elected, your votes in the state Senate will impact so many Californians. So The League really thanks you for being here today and answering these questions from voters. And thank you to our timer, Claudia Bonsignore, and the folks here at Metro Cable Television for a great venue. And voters, your ballots go out.